All right, good afternoon. Happy Monday, everyone. Can anybody believe we're already in December and Christmas is as close as it is? It's hard to believe that we've already come this far. Hard to believe that March of 2022 is 2 years of a pandemic. I sometimes I reflect back on kind of where we've been over the last couple of years, and it is kind of shocking. So today, we're glad that you are here with us. I'm Allison Scobber, Consolidated Planning Group. I run a holistic special needs planning firm. If you've joined us before, we're glad you're back. If this is your first time, we put out webinars on a pretty regular basis, usually even weekly, on various topics surrounding special needs and special needs planning. And today, this is a new topic, and so you're in for a treat if you, because we have not shared this webinar before. We've not had this one, and this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. So a little bit about me. I'm a mom to 4. I have 2 kids with special needs, the youngest 2. I've got one that's transitioning into adulthood and one that already has. And so these webinars were born out of really my own source of frustration of how difficult it is in navigating all things special needs. Even knowing what I know and doing what I do for a living, I just found it frustrating. And so it is important for us that we empower you and give you the tools and resources and the knowledge that you need to be successful in advocating for your child and getting things set up and put in place that are necessary for their success. So we're happy to bring that information to you. So this topic today, we're going to be talking about medical debt and planning. And so for a lot of our loved ones with special needs, a lot of them have critical care and chronic, medical needs. And so there's this constant push-pull of medical care and medical bills, and kind of navigating that in itself, just navigating EOBs and bills that are coming in through 7 different entities from a facility, and all these things that you can't make heads or tails with, and then all of the issues with insurance companies and the hospitals. Oh my gosh, it's never ending. And I am reminded that this was a very long time ago. We've done a lot of medical bill advocacy with Consolidated Planning Group over the years, because I as a parent myself, I remember opening the mailbox and having bills in excess of $250,000 from the hospital. But not only did we have one insurance, we had 2 insurances, and both had denied everything. I had a kid in the ICU, and I just remember opening these thick packets of bills, and it was so overwhelming. And so that was when medical advocacy and medical billing advocacy was born with Consolidated Planning Group, because learning how to navigate that and how to ask the right questions and how to not ignore these things, because when you do ignore this, which a lot of families choose to do this, it really does hurt your credit. So there is a right way. There are all kinds of things and resources and things that we can go about to make these things go away. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So having said that, I just want to do a little housekeeping. All of you are in a muted state. We can't see you or hear you, but we know you're there. We want to answer as many questions as possible today, so I will be monitoring the chat box for Yolanda, and we'll get to as many questions as possible. We're going from 12 to 1 today. We will be finished by 1 o'clock or before. Today's message is being recorded, and you will get an email later today or tomorrow with the slides as well as the recording. So having said that, welcome, Yolanda. We're so glad that you're here, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Allison. My name is Yolanda Baker, and I am an accountant and a special needs parent. And I'll be talking to you today about my journey into what Allison and probably some of you all, or most of you, have experienced. And if anything, I want you to understand that I know what you're going through, and I want to help you. And I want to know what main issues you have, and how I can help. So let's get started here. This will be a very broad overview. And so title of this webinar is How to Save on Medical Expenses. I'm also, besides an accountant, I'm also an author of the book, The Smart Family's Guide to Healthcare Savings. What I'd like to do, because I understand how tired we all are as special needs parents. So right now, what I'd like to do is just offer you my email, curativefinance@gmail.com. And let's start from there. I don't like offering anything besides the presentation, because I know sometimes we forget things and we're in a hurry. We want to get this webinar over with. So please feel free. Contact me after this webinar at the email address. Let's start the conversation going, and let's see how we can help each other. I have plenty of DIY free resources for you. If you need a little extra help, I do offer my consulting services. I need to have a disclaimer here. The info from this seminar is not to be taken as medical or financial advice. It's for informational purposes only. I assume no liability for any issues that may arise from the following recommendations. There's no guarantee that you'll receive any reimbursement using the methods that I offer you, although I hope you do. And the seminar and book are the accumulation of years of trial and error, as well as listening to other special needs parents. I do advise that you seek the advice of professional advisors such as CPAs, financial planners, advisors, and attorneys, as well as healthcare providers for clarification. So again, I'm an accountant, I'm an author. I also just finished the Rice University FinTech Bootcamp. So I am a novice, although I am practicing, a blockchain developer, and I am the founder of Curative Finance. We won't go too much into that today. I really want to focus on the method that I created over these past 12 plus years. I can't believe it's been that long. So I'm going to begin with a story. And this is my son, pre-diagnosis. Happy little boy, still is. Very joyful soul. Just wonderful to be with. So this is how it started. And by the way, I will try to be more in depth with this. And there's one other thing I forgot. I am so sorry, my apologies. I do have a slight head tremor. And so if I am listening to a question that you're offering me and my head starts shaking, it's not because I'm disagreeing with you. It is the head tremor. So my apologies in advance. So again, starting with my son, he was diagnosed at about 18 months. And at that point, my husband and I went straight to work. We went to countless therapists and advisors, and we changed his diet. We went to a nutritionist. We went to a speech therapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist. We went to these alternative treatments, homeopath, naturopath, anything with a P-A-T-H at the end, probably went. And then about 4 months after the diagnosis, we were lucky enough to have our son attend a special needs school. So everything was going as planned until, by the way, that's one of my favorite photographs of him. Everything was going as planned until our insurance came in, started getting the piles of letters, and we were denied almost all the claims we submitted. And that was because my husband and I were unaware of how the healthcare system worked. Besides giving birth to my son, I never really had a major medical event before that. And that procedure and the bills went pretty smooth. So this was the first time we were confronted with these denials. And it didn't make any sense because we got the prescription from our pediatrician requesting speech therapy, occupational therapy. And so we continued on with this therapy in spite of the out-of-pocket cost. And during that time, and for several years after, we could say we fought, but we negotiated, is probably a better term, with the insurer to get some of these expenses reimbursed. And it was quite a few years to get some of those denials resolved. So it was a struggle. And during that time, I was almost on the verge of declaring bankruptcy because I didn't want to stop the therapies. My son needed them, and so I took out lines of credit. I did other things, but it was getting close to that point. I was seriously considering that. But then I realized that, I have a background in taxation. I have all these resources. Why don't I just look at all the notes that I've gathered and write something and create something, some sort of method that can help me out? And so initially it was just for myself. I had about 700 pages of notes and articles that I've read, and I put them all into this system that I created. And then I decided, you know what, I need to share this with people because I think this might help others. So from the struggle and my background in accounting taxation, I created the method, the system, the Bite Your Bill system, and the book, The Smart Guide to Healthcare Savings. It's in its 5th edition now. And so what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about something that I haven't heard in any seminar, to be honest. I've been to quite a few about healthcare cost and talking about what you will do for retirement. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not retiring for many years. I want to talk about right now. How do I save right now on my medical expenses? Because as most of you may know, financial advisors, they look to your past, they prepare you for the future. But I pose the question, who is there to help you right now? And so from the struggle and from my knowledge, I created something called the Bite Your Bill system. And it is B, which is budgeting, I, which is health insurance, T for taxes, and E for employer-sponsored health plans, such as HSAs and FSAs. I wanted to do something that people could remember, and Bite Your Bills was something easy to remember. And so what we're going to talk about the details of each letter of the acronym, but this is a holistic system. It can be used year-round. The entire thing can be used, or perhaps you just want to focus on health insurance, and that's fine. Primarily, this system is ideal for Americans, working Americans who have a stable employment history. Unfortunately, even though I tried, this method is not meant for people whose sole income is government assistance, unfortunately. But even then, I could probably still help you with some resources. So let's talk a little bit about each letter from the Bite Your Bill system. And let's start off first with budgeting, which is my favorite subject. Honestly, I don't have a specific plan, a unique system for budgeting. But if you have one you like, stick with it. A lot of my clients swear by Dave Ramsey. I think that's great. I tried it. I lost one of the envelopes. And so I decided, I think I'm not going to do that. So find something that suits you and customize it. I don't think there's really any bad budgeting system out there that I've seen. And so what I decided to do was I decided to create a checking account for my son's expenses. And so what you can do as just an idea is perhaps you can create a checking or savings account via your bank only for your medical expenses and reimbursements. If you have more than one child, perhaps another separate checking account, although it wouldn't be a problem for some people to consolidate all expenses from more than one child or person in the family. Whatever is most comfortable for you. So what I did was I did create a separate checking account for my son's expenses. And another thing I did under the budgeting category is that pre-COVID, I use cash for transactions. And what I do is that I take the spare change and put it into a piggy bank. And then what I used to do was I would take the coins from the piggy bank and I would deposit it into my son's checking account. The first year that I did this, I believe it was about $650 in spare change for that year that I was able to put into my son's account. Now that we're in the post-COVID or during the COVID era, there are a lot of places that don't accept cash. And so one of the things that I modified was I would write on a note how much I paid via check or credit card. And then I would take the difference. So if it was $18.02, I would write an IOU for 98 cents. And then I would tally up a week or month's worth of change. I would write a check out to myself and deposit it into my son's checking account. There's so many different things you can do. And in my book, I describe a few more techniques.
One thing I wanted to chime in here, Yolanda, on this as far as parents and kids and their accounts.
Yes.
One place, so if you have a special needs child that doesn't get SSI and Medicaid now, they will likely qualify when they turn 18.
That's right.
So there are some caveats to this. You may want that account to be an ABLE account. A 529A is something that you may want. And we help people, we talk about those and we help people set those up. The other thing is that account that she's referring to, instead of putting it in the child's name, you might just want it to be a separate account in your name, because you cannot have more than $2,000 in your child's name or they will not qualify for SSI and Medicaid when they turn 18. So I just wanted to put that caveat in there for those that kids may qualify.
Absolutely, Allison. Thank you. And that was one of the things I do mention in my books and in other webinars. But yes, what I would recommend is, if it's, and my apologies, because I always think about a child being a minor, but we do have adult children out there. And so this would be most beneficial if you have a minor child. And usually by the time they are teenagers, I would recommend at that point, switching the account to your name or closing the account. It was just easy for me because my son still is a teenager. It was easy for me to put it under his name because it helped me put more into the savings. But again, if you do have an adult child, as Allison said, setting up an ABLE account, which is beyond the seminar, that is something you should look into. Yes, the checking account, if you feel most comfortable, could be under your name, but remember that it is only for your medical expenses, and that will help you segregate regular expenses from your child's or your own medical expenses. So I also want to talk about the I in the Bite Your Bill system, which is insurance specific explanation of benefits, your health insurance policy, looking for a medical claims advocate, and claim denials. And we're going to talk a little bit about claim denials in a little bit, but just a summary of these things. I think one of the most important things that you can understand while you're on this journey to figure out your health insurance is really understand what your explanation of benefits are. And when I first started on this journey, it was very difficult and confusing to read the explanation of benefits, the EOB. I didn't understand most of what was written on it because each health insurer had their own way of describing what the benefits or what the explanation of benefits were. But now we have one type of EOB for all health insurers, from what I understand. And it is, for me personally, it's so much easier to read and understand. So out of everything here in regards to health insurance, I would highly recommend, if you have the time, to really get to know the explanation of benefits, what that form is, because I think that's the first step in really becoming an empowered consumer and special needs parents for your child, understanding what that entails. I have to be honest with you, I still have some difficulties at times remembering some of the information in the EOB, but then I read it again and it all comes back. Also, what you want to do is you want to read your health insurance policy. And I'm not talking about that 20-page policy. What you want is your certificate of coverage. There may be other terms that are used, but it is usually anywhere between 75 to 120 pages long. And you can request that From what I understand, the health insurer is required to mail you a paper copy if you request it. And me being a more tactile reader, I do like reading physical things. And so I've requested the physical copy every time our health insurance changes. And so take a look at your health insurance policy. I know it's probably a cure for insomnia because it has for me, but I would really recommend that you take a look at it when you have time. And if you just get a kernel of knowledge, a little bit more understanding of how your health insurance policy works, it's going to go a long way, along with understanding your explanation of benefits. I just think it's an incredible thing if you can just understand just a portion of that. And of course, if it's all too overwhelming, there are medical claim advocates. They have different names. I've seen medical billing advocates. It's something that you can Google and find out. Also, Allison's Consolidated Planning Group might be a good place to start there also. But if you feel a bit, sorry, Allison, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We definitely do medical bill advocacy from time to time. A lot of people don't know that we do that. But one of the things, to echo what you were saying about getting that plan document, I personally have had experience where the plan document contradicted what the other thing said. So I was actually able to hold the insurance company's feet to the fire and make them pay for something that they were actually denying. Now, they changed the wording in the plan document later, and it should have been updated. It was probably a mistake that it didn't get updated. However, because it contradicted itself, so these are the types of things that you can do when you're fighting a claim that should have been paid that wasn't, et cetera. So that's one thing. But I think just being clear, especially when we have family members with significant medical issues and medical needs, this is especially important if you're starting a new job. And getting new group health insurance, or if you're leaving the workplace and going self-employed and buying health insurance on the individual market, these are all really, really good times to do that. But I will say, since most of the people that are on here today are in Texas, the individual market for health insurance in Texas really hasn't been good in 5 or 6 years. There's basically been 0 PPOs. So if you're thinking about stepping out and you have a loved one in your family with critical medical issues, that your doctors are important, your network is important, the coverage is important, really, really look at that closely. You can reach out. We can help you with that. But it may be, the answer might be that the best thing is that you can do right now, unless there's like changes in health insurance, is to stay in a job that has a group health plan. So I think that is important, but I can't echo this enough of getting the plan document. Most people don't even know, other than the little document that you get when you sign up at open enrollment, that there exists a plan document, because they don't send it to you unless you ask for it. So thank you for mentioning that.
Well, thank you, Allison. That's, exactly. I did not know about the Texas self-insurance being a little not as stable as the others. But I have consulted with families in which I tell them, well, maybe you should stick it out with your company for a while, because these health benefits are incredible. So I have encountered those kind of situations, but just part of the empowerment is just understanding little by little the EOB, your health insurance, asking questions, going online to other groups, meetup groups, talking with other special needs parents. All that is part of that, the system I created that helped you become more empowered. And like Allison said, you might find something and you talk to that health insurance of yours and you say, hey, I notice here on page 178 that you are contradicting yourself when you say you don't cover this. And I do mention a few things in my book. Unfortunately, we could spend hours here on certain techniques you can use in order to get the coverage that you deserve, that is written in your policy. Because unfortunately, with some, can't say all, but with some insurers, there is some conflicting information that you believe is true, but that they believe otherwise. And it's a matter of, again, becoming empowered and understanding the policy and saying, hey, I'm sorry, but what you're saying is incorrect. So we got to move on. This is the health insurance section of the Bite Your Bill system is probably the most, for me, it was the most intense portion, because there was so much information that I didn't know. And it was a trial by fire most of the time, but it was just an incredible learning experience. And I hope that I'm getting some information out to y'all that you haven't learned before. Now, taxes, I love. I mean, I could talk about it all day. This was not a problem at all. And I know some of you are falling asleep right now just by the mention of it, but I have a taxation background. I'm an accountant. And when I started this journey and I felt as if it was insurmountable, I started thinking, hey, let's look into the tax code here. And it was funny because the first CPA that I visited, and I had this documentation, and I said, I think adult diapers are deductible. And I think my son's medical food is deductible because I came up with this formula. And I saw just for a split second that look of sheer terror in my CPA's eyes, because I knew at that point that he didn't know what I was talking about, because the medical portion of the tax code, I think, is something that a lot of CPAs don't really dive into. Probably because they don't have a lot of special needs families who talk about it, but also there's a lot of special needs or just families who have large medical debts who don't realize that there is a treasure trove of deductions that you can use. Now, things have changed to where the threshold has increased and decreased over the years. We'll talk briefly about that, but there still are some special needs families or families in general that unfortunately have a large enough threshold to where you can deduct medical expenses. So we'll go over this briefly. So in regards to taxes, there's a few things you have to remember. You have to know what a deductible medical expense is and when to use it. You have to understand that not all medical expenses are deductible. We'll talk about that. Your alternative medical procedures, however, and the remedies may be deductible, which was the biggest eye-opener for me. I could not believe some of the things that I had been, the practitioners that I had been visiting. Those procedures were actually deductible. So you need to follow a few rules for that. We'll go over that briefly too. And most importantly, keep those receipts. And that is not me. That is not my desk. So let's talk about deductible medical tax expense definition. This is from the IRS publication 502, Medical and Dental Expenses. I would recommend that if you're able to, and if you have a strong cup of coffee, take a look at that document. It's a treasure trove of information. But like I said, because I'm kind of an accounting nerd, I love this stuff. Most people don't, but I think that's because I'm so excited about this, because it literally has saved me thousands of dollars in this portion. So let's go over it. So from the publication 502, the cost of diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease, and the cost for treatments affecting any part or function of the body. It does not include expenses that are merely beneficial for general health, such as vitamins or vacation. It does include services and treatments from a holistic practitioner, including those who are not licensed or certified in your state. Example, homeopaths and naturopaths. So what do I mean by this? Not every medical expense is deductible, right? So let's go over that. So it was a very quick lesson for me when I discovered that not every medical expense was deductible. I did have I won't go into too much detail, but I had a very friendly talk with a certain person from a certain agency in regards to these expenses. So, so what I learned was this, and I asked myself these questions. So is the treatment or service covered by that definition that I just spoke about? Do you have a prescription of the condition from your physician? And do you have the receipt or statement from the treatment or service? Okay, so these are some of the several requirements that I mentioned in the book, but these are the most important first steps to get those expenses deducted. So there are other requirements, right? But these are the best first steps. I want to talk about this. This is my attempt at humor, but it proves a point. So this is fake tax tip number 1A. During an IRS audit regarding the deductibility of your chakra therapy visits, do not prove your point by rubbing a crystal on the agent's head. And so I like putting a bit of humor in my book. And one of the biggest compliments I received was that this was the funniest tax book that they ever read. I put several fake tax tips throughout the book, but I also want it to be a learning experience, because if we go back, does the treatment or service covered by the definition? Is it covered by that? And so I have encountered some clients who say, I'm really into crystals or the chakras. I'm sorry, I don't know much about that portion of, I guess, the New Age services. Sorry, but they're talking about holding hands above the body and, the crystals. And so I go back to this. Whenever someone approaches me about this, I say, how risk averse are you? For me, I'm a risk taker. I like to see if these medical expenses I have are covered, but I do my research. And so again, this is not advice. This is a special needs mom talking to their or individual. From my experience is this: anything that involves a remedy, I would consider in which it mitigates or treats or cures a condition would be considered a medical expense. Again, this is not tax advice. This is just from my experience. New Age kind of, and I'm not putting anybody down, but that kind of unusual kind of treatments where you really don't touch or use remedies for the body, I would have to say that you shouldn't really consider those as medical expenses. But again, this is all about empowering you and making you informed and seeing how far you want to go with this. That is, do you want to include all of these expenses, which are legitimate, or do you feel a little risk averse? And again, I talked to, go ahead, Allison, please.
I want to ask something that comes up all the time, because it used to be that in order to be able to deduct your medical expenses, kind of the old rule of thumb was 7.5% of AGI, and then I believe it's moved. And I'm not a tax specialist.
Yes.
Caveat. But then I believe it's moved, and this was just from my own records with my own stuff, that it moved to 10% of adjusted gross income, your AGI. So for a lot of families, it's pretty hard to show that high of expenses. And one question that we get all the time is about private schools that are for special needs, about nanny services for special needs. Those are some of the things that come up all of the time on that. Yes. So do you have any thoughts on that, or do you talk about that in your book?
Absolutely. Thank you, Allison. Sorry, I get carried away with taxes. I can't help it. But yes, I do talk about the specific case law, the specific tax court cases in which a parent attempted to deduct the educational expenses, the therapeutic expenses in going into a special needs school. And I made it a point. I used several case laws that said, hey, when this parent took this child to this school, it was 100% deductible. However, when this parent went to this school to help his child with his ADHD, as an example, it was not covered. And I explained why. And unfortunately, that would probably be an hour-long seminar. But for anybody listening, again, please go to my email. I'll show you it at the end of this webinar again. Please send me an email if you want for me to talk to you about that, I do have a special abbreviated version of my book that I would be happy to show you what the case law is. But yes, there are quite a few therapeutic schools or therapeutic clinics that are covered by this. You can also use your flexible savings account for it. And you can also, depending on the HSA, you can also use your health savings account, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But yes, absolutely, Allison. There are times where if you send your child to I guess a special needs school, there's other ways of saying it, but there is deductibility in that. And that's one of the things that a lot of parents don't understand, because they're saying, oh, I'm never going to reach that threshold. But once we get into the details, they realize, oh my gosh, we didn't include school. And so we look at the case law. And again, this is not advice because I'm not a CPA. But once we look into the case law and we do a couple of question and answer sessions, then we realize, yes, this is covered. And let's put this into as a deductible expense. I hope that answered the question. So let's keep going. The last part of the Bite Your Bill system is the employer-sponsored health plans, also known as HSAs, health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts, and other cafeteria plans. This actually helped us a lot. A personal story about us. My husband had a health savings account with a high deductible healthcare plan. And so what we did is that every year we would max out the HSA, and then we would use that for some of the medical procedures. One job that he also had a flexible savings account. So we used that for my son's special needs school. And it worked wonders. It was a great tool to have in our arsenal. In regards to these employer-sponsored health plans, read the cafeteria plan documents thoroughly. Each HSA plan is a little different from the others. So if you have at one job an HSA and it has these things covered, your next job, there may be no guarantees that that's covered. So again, my experience is to place the maximum amount allowed for your plan. And my experience, again, is to try to use the HSA funds first before even thinking about your tax deductions. And again, that's my personal experience. I noticed that there were a few years where I didn't make the threshold. And so I just decided to use the HSA plan and max that out. Although I have heard cases of some people who do not have chronic medical expenses. What I have found out from some people is that they use that as a retirement plan. You max it out every year. Maybe you use some or none of it, and that keeps going. It doesn't, unlike an FSA, the HSA does not expire at the end of the year. So you can roll over your HSA expense or your HSA contributions every year. For some of my clients who don't have chronic medical needs, that's one of the things that I advise them to do if they don't do that already, because by the time they do reach retirement age, they might have a nice healthcare savings. They might have a nice a bundle of cash right there that they can use when they retire.
Also, I wanted to chime in here. Yes. We are licensed on the health insurance side of the house. What I would say on those HSA accounts, yes, they're good. And also, you know, I'm a fan of maxing those out, especially even if you don't have a kid with critical illnesses. When you have a family of 4 or 5 and your deductible is $5,000 or $6,000 a year or something like that, they really come in handy for that purpose. And in that regard, and we can help, you know, explain this, but doing, you know, this is a time of year of open enrollment. Some of it is probably already past September and October for effective dates in January. But sometimes people think, I have a child that has, you know, critical care needs, so I should get the best health plan, the most expensive one. And sometimes the most expensive one is simply just the most expensive one. It's not the best. For people such as yourself, if you fall into that category, oftentimes you are best to take that high deductible plan because those, and have that HSA account, because those plans go to 100% once you hit that out-of-pocket maximum. So like for us, we're a family that hits the out-of-pocket maximum the same month that we turn over. So it's like the best deal on the planet to take that high deductible plan, because there's no office visit co-pays. It just simply ends up going to 100%. So those are all things to take into consideration if you do have a loved one with critical care needs or expensive, health things that are happening every year with your plan.
Thank you, Allison. Hey, Allison, would you like to be my partner in future seminars? I mean, I love this because you're saying things that I wish some of my listeners would ask me, but that you're right on it, because a lot of people are kind of turned off by the high deductible healthcare plans. But in my book and in my talks, I tell them that this is probably, if you have a special needs family, that this is probably the best outcome to try that.
Usually people don't sit down with a calculator and do the dollars and cents and
Yes.
realize that it goes to that 100%. So because none of us have extra time on our hands, right? But
Yeah.
but it's
Yes.
just something that's worth looking at. And if you've already missed it, you already signed up for the new plan and it starts January 1st. It's no big deal. When open enrollment happens again, let's look at it closely. When you change jobs or you change plans or you have kind of an opportunity throughout the year, I just think it's worth looking at it closely. From a time perspective, we're about at a quarter till, so I'll let you keep going. So thank you.
Well, we'll speed this up because the most important parts were what we just spoke about. So this is a testimonial from my husband's college friend, in which I helped her out, gave her the book, and she was able to get back several $1,000s from her revised tax return. And I will save that for later because it's also in the book. But I was so happy that I was able to help her out. And again, I'd love to give details, but this would take about 5 hours and you'd probably end up like that. So here are the top questions I have from the clients. Health insurer denied my healthcare claim. What do I do now? And what if I can't pay a medical bill? What I would advise, besides talking with the consolidated planning group, if you have a little time, I would strongly recommend that you visit the Patient Advocate Foundation. It has actually helped me many times in the past when I was confused about my claims, about denials, what I can do, what were my rights. It is a wealth of information. Again, it could be a bit overwhelming, but the website is very easy to navigate. I would just advise just taking a look at that if you have time. I can't highly recommend it more. It's just a great resource. Out of all the resources that I've gone to in regards to healthcare claims, just for resources to start off, I would advise that. Also, talking with other special needs families in online groups also might help. But again, there's so many different resources.
I think there's good here on the Patient Advocate Foundation. I'm a huge fan of this one too. Also, they sometimes have clinical trials. And I know when people think of clinical trials, they think of cancer treatment and other things, and that's true. But there are other studies at other universities and other things for kids with autism, with ADHD, and all kinds of other things. So there may be, if you're struggling or some of the out-of-pocket or some of the things that, it might be worth it to just peek and see what's out there, psychological issues, all kinds of stuff. There may be studies out there that you can become a part of. And as a result of becoming a part of that, those treatments can be free or discounted. You can be paid for your time. So this is definitely a great resource. So definitely check that out for any of the diagnoses that you guys are working with your families.
Thank you, Allison. I can't recommend it more. So what if I can't pay a medical bill? Actually, the question should be, what do I do with a medical bill? So let's talk about that. You need to open it up and read it as soon as possible. I know it's kind of like tearing a bandage from your skin, but just do it as soon as you get the envelope. Read the information. I know it's painful and there's times where I didn't want to deal with it, but it's the one thing you have to do. Just read it as soon as possible, because what you want to do is, if you feel as if this information is correct, even if you feel it may not be correct, maybe you just want confirmation, call the billing department on the bill as soon as possible and go over it with it. There's other things you can do, but that's some of one of the most important things you could do is read the document, just read it. And again, if you feel like you need additional help, contact Patient Advocate Foundation. From the previous slide, talk with Allison, talk with your mom, talk with somebody. Try to see how you can find ways to reduce the bill. And again, having a little bit of empowerment, understanding your health insurance plan, understanding your EOBs is such an important thing to do in regards to feeling empowered and trying to deal with these medical bills. It really does help.
One thing I want to say here is people have always heard that you can just make payments forever to the hospitals. And it's kind of true, except for they have to agree to it. So my big takeaway here is don't let these bills, because I know people feel overwhelmed and these bills are stacking up. So what happens is they stack up, and then the next thing you know, they've sent it to collections. There's a million things that you can do with these bills effectively, even if you don't have a lot of money. Prior to it being sent to collections, you have little options once it's sent to collections. So don't let it go to collections. Yes. And the biggest thing I think it's a myth that people just say, well, you could send them $5 a month and they can't send you to collections. And that is a myth. They have to agree to a payment plan. And once that payment plan is agreed to, then they won't send you to collections. That part is true. And when you call these customer service people at these hospitals, they're trained to say, okay, well, you can pay 1/12 or you can pay 1/36 over the next 3 years, whatever it is. There's only a certain threshold. And if that isn't your threshold, if you had in mind you want to pay $20 a month or $50 a month or $100 a month, whatever it is, tell them, I appreciate that, but that's not in line and I need to get something approved. So could you escalate this to a supervisor? And a supervisor is going to have more authority to reduce that monthly payment. And from a financial planning perspective, I'm not a huge fan of paying your medical bill. So say you have a $25,000 bill, a helicopter bill or something crazy, which I've had. I don't recommend you take a distribution from your retirement account and pay that bill off, in one full swoop, or take money out of your savings or something that's, bearing interest to pay that bill off completely when these facilities will take a payment plan. So you can be earning interest on your money. And guess what? They agree to these payment plans and they don't charge you interest like your credit card. So if you call and you put this big charge on your credit card, you're going to get charged interest. But these hospitals are not charging you interest. So there's really, really smart ways that you can go about doing this. So I hope that empowers you with whatever that you're dealing with. And those are some of kind of the tools of the trade and how we work through some of these things.
Took the words right out of my mouth, Allison. Thank you so much. It's about understanding what your rights are and talking with those people and seeing what you can do. Do not pay the bill sight unseen. Don't pay it right away. There are things you can do to lower your medical expenses. And I'm going to skip this slide. And I'm going to skip this slide because I want to thank you all for being so patient and listening to my method that has saved me thousands of dollars over the years. Thanks for listening, and thank you for your future support. Again, please, I beg you, I encourage you, please email me. Tell me what's going on. I have, again, free resources if you want to DIY. I also offer consultation services if you need a little bit more help. I also have my book, but again, contact me first, and I will also give you some special offers before purchasing that book. But again, I want to thank you,
Yolanda.
Allison.
We want you to put your book. We want you to put your book in the chat box to everyone. The name of the book and where they can find that. One other little tip that I do like to share with families too is hospitals. Now it's harder with doctors' offices, okay? But hospital systems have something called a charity care application. It might be called charity care. It might be called financial assistance application. Don't be proud call them and request the financial assistance application. And even if you make a lot of money, and even if you have a lot of assets, I don't care. You can request that financial assistance application, because that might be why they will give you a negotiated payment plan. There are some facilities out there that that they're so often not getting paid that if you call and you say, I'd like to pay this bill, but I want to know if there's a discount if I pay it in full, I've seen as much as a 50% discount, and regularly 20 and 30% discounts on if you pay it in full and don't do a payment plan. So those are some of those things. But that charity care or the patient financial assistance application, it goes a long way, and we have some templates and other things like that we can show you. But you submit that, and you submit it honestly. You put your real information in there. You're not trying to hide anything. But then if your situation is bleak, then you're going to write a letter that goes along with that application that says, here's my application, but what you don't see is XYZ. My house flooded in Harvey. I have 2 special needs kids. I'm unable to work as a result of that. The pandemic, whatever your real story is, if you have a story, a real story that has affected your ability, or one good story is, hey, welcome to my world. You're one of 10 different hospital bills that we have right now. Thank you very much. Those types of things, they go to a committee and they'll work with you. And the thing is a lot of times people don't take the time to write a letter. They don't take the time to fill out the information because they think it's no use and nobody's going to help me. They just want their money. And the reality of the situation is the hospitals will work with you. If you'll work with them, they will work with you. So I, again, I just want to say again, thank you, Yolanda, for being here today, and be empowered. Don't let those bills sit on the shelf. Don't let it, mess up your credit and things like that. There are tons of options and resources for you for that. And so having said that, did you have more slides, Yolanda?
I do not. But again, if anybody wants to purchase the book, please contact me first, because I have additional resources versus just buying it via Amazon. But take a look at it. I did post it on the chat, but that's
for sure. And if you'll advance the slides,
sure.
I think we can go. You can probably, let's see here.
Can I stop sharing? Would that help?
No, just go ahead and advance the slides. Yeah, and you can, that's fine. Actually you can go to the next one. So for those of you that are just, joining us for the first time today, we always have a quick thing of things that should be on your special needs planning radar. We've got webinars on all of these topics. So you can visit our YouTube channel, Consolidated Planning Group on YouTube, and we have past recordings out there. So if you've missed some, you can check them out. And then you'll get an email. I think once a month we put out an email of upcoming webinars that we'll be having. So if you can join us, certainly we're glad to have you. Next slide, please. I always, we do a lot of webinars, and a lot of times either myself or Michelle that are conducting the webinars, but I always just like to say to meet the team, because it's not just Allison Schaberg. We've got a whole team of collaborative professionals here, and we are excited and happy to work with you. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the MDRT, and also the Academy of Special Needs Planners. So we're always happy to help with whatever your needs are. And just wanted you to kind of have some faces with the names. And I think our next slide is just our contact information. So yes, we absolutely do free personalized consultations. So wherever you are in the planning process, we always say, we're not here to rain on any good planning that you've already done. We're here to build on the foundation that you've already put down. But the sooner you get started, the better. The sooner you pick up where you left off, the better, especially if you have a special needs child that's going to need care for the rest of their life, not just the rest of yours. So like I said, here is our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that and you'll see all of our past webinars. Today's webinar will be out there later this afternoon. And having said that, Yolanda, again, thank you again for being here. And we would most definitely love to tag team with you again on this important topic. This is kind of a taboo topic that nobody ever talks about, of the ridiculous
Yes.
mounting medical bills, or what insurance didn't pay, or beating your head against the wall with denials and things like that. And so I'm just so glad that we talked about this today, because I know for me, again, here it is. And this was, again, it was a really long time ago, but I'm telling you, I felt really overwhelmed. Like, I opened up the mailbox and knowing what I know. I do insurance and financial planning for a living. I know what I know. But to look at $250,000 worth of claims that had been denied, and I had two different, health insurance programs, I couldn't believe it. And I think the overwhelming thing is, oh my gosh, if they have denied this already, we're in for like $1.5 million or $2 million worth of claims at this point, with the diagnosis that we had. And so it was just like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? I mean, it's like this panic moment. And it doesn't have to be that way, but that moment and that time in my life is what catapulted me into advocacy for medical bills, and kind of learning, like that, the document that you were saying, the plan document and things like that, kind of learning the ropes and who to talk to and how to say politely next, when you're talking to the customer service at the hospital or what have you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. We'll definitely partner again, and thank you everyone for being here today. You'll get an email later this afternoon with the recording. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye now.